being on the Assembly, and I would look forward to that experience.
Bob, a little brief summary why you'd like to be on the Assembly.
Good evening. My name's Bob Lynn, and I came to town tonight, and there's lights out here after dark. It was kind of interesting. Anyhow, I do have some prepared comments that I'd like to give. And first of all, to answer your question, why I submitted my name for one of the Assembly positions, I need to provide you with some background for those of you who don't know me. I was one of the Charter Committee members that developed the charter which is now being implemented. Like Nancy Strand, I spent a considerable amount of my personal time and money participating in the charter's formation. My wife and I built a house and lived in Petersburg for 4 years. Our kids attended Petersburg High School. My wife worked with the staff at the high school. At the time, I was in charge of all the national forests that is now within this borough, within the Wrangell Borough, and clear out through QU Islands. My wife and I choose this area to make our home. We have friends throughout the Petersburg Borough. I'm interested in what happens to the people in this area. I believe my participation throughout the borough formation process gives me a unique perspective that provides the insights and expertise needed to competently represent all the residents of this borough. If selected, I will work hard for all borough residents to ensure fair and equitable treatment for everyone. Thank you.
Jay Stanton Gregor, could you please give us a little summary?
Good evening. My name is Jay Stanton Gregor. I live here in town currently. I'm co-owner of True North Counseling and Consultation. Some of you know me maybe from my time spent in the public schools. Some of you may know me from Papke's Landing or Kupernov. Others of you may know me from my time at the coffee shops with my boy Silas. To answer the question of why I'd like to be on the Assembly, simply put, I think it's important to be of use in life. Each day in my chosen profession, I try to be of use to the clients I see, and I see this as an opportunity to be of use to the community. I'm a diligent, thoughtful decision maker in my personal and professional life, and I think those skills would be useful to the borough. Thanks.
Thank you. Kurt Walhuter, please.
I'm Kurt Walhuter, and I've been a resident of Petersburg for about 34 years. I've had opportunity to serve on the Harbor Board this is my 4th term now, so for about 11 years. So I've seen a lot of expansion in the community and a lot of economic growth due to that. And I think this would just be a further extension into what I've already been participating in. I was on the PEDC board for 1 term, and I want to think I went a little further, and then I decided that there was too much of a conflict there, so I moved on and somebody else took my place. But anyway, that would be the reason I'd want to serve on the Assembly, is to continue the economic growth and the stability in the community. Thank you.
Okay, so we've heard from the 4 candidates who would like to be appointed to the 2 positions on the Assembly, and we're going to do this by ballot. We will mark off the 2 that we want. We have to have 4 votes to confirm anybody to be seated on the Assembly. This is kind of what the ballot looks like. So then we'll pass them to the clerk, and she will tally them. She's going to get on the phone.
To ask him a question.
I'll give you the floor here, John, when I get done with this little summary of how we're going to go about the vote. Anyway, John Hogue will be off speakerphone. We'll give the city clerk his 2 choices. She will register those on the ballot, and we'll keep voting until we come up with 4 votes for 2 people. You had something you wanted to add, Member Hogue?
Mr. Mayor, I was wondering, I know you don't like the format of questions, but I was wondering if it would be possible to ask 1 question and have the 4 candidates answer it.
Sure.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
The question is, in the most likely event that the legislature does not fund a police building, would they support a ballot measure for the voters to bond the police building?
Can we start with Cindy again, and can you reply to that?
Cindy Lagodakis. I believe I would support a bond measure for the police building. I know that it's been a long-standing issue with Petersburg, and it is a health and safety issue, and at some point we are going to have to address that.
Thank you. Bob, would you give your response, please?
Bob Lynn, I'm not sure what I would do, Mr. Hoag. I haven't talked with sufficient people around this borough yet to know where they stand on the issue. And I guess it'd be premature for me to make that decision at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Jay, could you please give a response to Assemblymember Hoag?
Assemblymember Hoag, I think that's a great question. But similar to Bob Lynn, I think it's a bit premature to give a yes or a no to that. I think my initial response is I'm hesitant to do so. I think bonding should be done with great thought and care so we don't put the borough in long-standing debt. I'm not necessarily averse to it, but I'd want to give it serious consideration. So I guess it's not really a yes or a no.
Thank you. Jay.
Yep.
Kurt, could you please answer the question? And your question, John, was whether you would be willing to put a bond measure on a ballot?
Yes.
Kurt Walhuter. Yes, I think I would probably support that. I mean, I supported the pool, I supported the new gym, I supported the new library. And we've had a group out there that states that the current police station is in desperate need of repair, and I think it's a liability issue, and I think I would be in support of it for those reasons. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Does that answer your question, Member Hoag?
Thank you for your consideration, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, candidates, for taking the time to answer that.
Okay, well, we may as well start with our first round of voting. And you don't have to fill the circle. And Member Strand asked earlier if you had to, if you could put an X on it to just.
John? Okay, I'm going to put you back on hold now. You're back on speaker.
I can't decide.
Okay, if you fold them in half and pass them down this way, we're going to have Matt help from Campus K. He's going to open them and read them to me. Where is he?
He's right behind you.
Where'd he go? He's got the place here. Okay. You get me all messed up here. Okay, if you just read them out loud as you get them, and I'll mark them.
Okay.
Yep.
Cindy Lagodakis and Kurt Walhuter. Cindy Lagodakis and Kurt Walhuter. Cindy Lagodakis and Kurt Walhuter. Cindy Lagodakis and Jay Stanton Gregor. Bob Lynn and Kurt Walhuter.
Council, you do have two that have gotten 4 votes. Cindy Lakodakis has gotten 4, and Kurt Walhuter has gotten 4. Jay and Bob have each gotten 1.
Well, with the results of the first ballot, we have 4 votes for Cindy Lakodakis and 4 votes for Kurt Walhuter. So at this time, if you would come forward and take the oath of office, you could pick a seat at the assembly. And thank you, Bob Lynn and Jay Stanton Gregor, for putting your names in.
Mark, encourage them to put their names in.
And there is other positions, well, that we're going to need to have filled.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to have you recognize right up here in the chair. Oh, we take choice up here too, whichever one you're in.
That works out perfect, because I believe Mr. Hoag used to sit here. He won't have to be repositioned.
I needed some company over here.
Please raise your right hands. Do solemnly affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Alaska and the ordinances of the Petersburg Borough, and that you will honestly, faithfully, and impartially perform the duties of Assembly Member for the Petersburg Borough to the best of your ability.
I will.
Congratulations.
Welcome aboard.
Just need each to sign and be set.
Okay, you might have to bear with me a little bit tonight. I'm trying to figure out this Granicus program on the iPad. We're going to try to go electronic here eventually. So
Yeah, that'd be great.
other assemblies around Southeast have done that and had luck with it. So if I can do it, anybody can. Okay. Wait till everybody gets situated here.
Might have to call Matt.
Fill in the rest.
Yeah.
We gotta bring one.
We have another.
I can give you a different one if you
For the people listening in the audience, we're having a little technical difficulty here with the microphone. We should be back online shortly.
Do they per room in town or is it per bed, per bed? No, it's per bed, so it's per room in town?
Okay, we're on item 4 on the agenda right now, and that's approval of minutes. We need, that's for the regular meeting of February 4th, 2013. Entertain a motion to approve those minutes unless there's any changes.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of February 4th, 2013. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's approved. Is there any amendments to this evening's meeting agenda? Seeing none, we need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So move. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve this evening's meeting agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes. Now we're on to public hearings. Public hearing on ordinance 2013-4, an ordinance implementing an area-wide transient room tax in the amount of 4% throughout the Petersburg Borough and providing for the administration, collection, and reporting of the transient room tax. Ordinance 4 adheres to Borough Charter and transition plan requirements that the former City of Petersburg transient room tax provisions become area-wide within 90 days of borough incorporation. The ordinance is exactly the same as provided in failed ordinance 2013-2, except that subsection 4.33.030B has been amended to reduce the percentage of a combined price package for determination of a daily bed tax rate from 30% of the total cost of the package to 15% of the total package. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to talk to ordinance 2013-4? This is the public hearing, second reading. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to visitors' views related to the agenda. Is there any views from people in the audience related to the agenda? Councilor or Member Strand, you had a
I
question?
wondered if this letter needed to be read into the,
Probably when
hearing
we discuss
notes.
it under second reading, not under public.
not under the hearing?
Public hearing.
Public hearing?
We could do it either way. I thought we'd just do it when we were
Okay.
under our debate. You could read it if you
I
want. We
just
haven't
wondered,
moved
no,
on.
I just wondered.
Okay,
Just
I mean,
this
I
is
think
the
we'll-
first
it'll
I've
get
seen of
covered.
it, so.
Okay, any visitors' views related to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to visitors' views unrelated to the agenda. And we have representatives from Burmeyer Firstman Company, representatives Richard and Irina Firstman, the president and vice president of the consulting firm, contracted to assist the borough in searching and hiring of a new police chief. Good evening.
Well, good evening, and thank you for inviting us to come to before the assembly this evening. And first of all, I'd like to extend my congratulations to Cindy and Kurt on your appointment. And it's an awesome responsibility, and as you chart the course of the borough, and congratulations to the city borough too on your recent election by the people and ratification that this is a great place to live, and we've learned that, and so in addition to congratulating you, I want to thank you for your hospitality. Maureen and I have had a wonderful couple of days. We've spoken to over 40 people, many of whom were scheduled, some of whom just like to, who've met us on the street and decided they wanted to talk to us too. So that was great. So it's been a very consistent pattern for us the last couple of days, is that people are hospitable, people like to talk about their community, and that there's a great deal of pride. And so that's really been an impact on the two of us as we've taken a look at your community. A couple of things that we'd like to briefly touch on, and that is how the process is going to work, and that's both for the citizens, because this is the citizens' process, really, making sure that they're completely aware and transparent of what's going on, and also answer any questions that you might have this evening so we can provide some insight into what's going on. First of all, the insights we've gained talk about a community that cares very deeply about the future of its police department. That's been universal of everybody we've spoken to. Now, we've spoken to members of the police staff. We've spoken to city staff. We've spoken to community business leaders, educators, people from the hospital, people from all walks of life, really, have given generously of their time to come in and speak with us and give us a little detail on their piece, or at least their view of the community. We certainly understand that somebody that comes is going to have the characteristics of being collaborative. Somebody who's going to have to integrate themselves in with the community, not just sit behind a desk, but also get out and get to know community members, understand the DNA of what makes Petersburg the place it is. We also met a number of people from, ironically, from Minnesota, and so we were made quite at home. People who were either educated in Minnesota, and of course our Norwegian roots and Swedish, all of our Scandinavian roots. We came here, and we live very close to a community called New Scandia, and staying at the Scandia Inn so we felt right at home. Now, other things that traits that we see evident, that we obviously want someone experienced in police work, somebody who understands how they're going to be able to coach young officers and bring them up in their skill level, and be very concerned about not only how they approach the law, but also approach the culture of the community, and understand the issues that you're facing, and be able to come up with tactics on how to handle those in a way that's going to connect with the community. So we're going to be looking for those great police skills. We're going to be looking for the right personality. I think, as I stated earlier, collaborative, somebody who's going to work with the organizations. You have a network of organizations with your health organization, mental health, with your other policing agencies on the island and throughout the state that are very going to be important to continue those collaborative efforts with your fire, with your emergency medical, with your hospital. All of these interconnections we're finding are critical to the health of the community and to the effectiveness of the police department, and that's going to have to continue. So that's what we're going to look for. Really, someone with a lot of common sense is the community seems to have a lot of that. So now, as far as process, when we're done, we have already started to put together a profile of the community. It's going to end up being a 4-page profile that describes who you are through our third-person eyes, and also what the position entails, what sort of things are going to be on the plate for their first 6 months. And we use that then as a recruiting tool, and that tool will be put on our website, will be put on your website, will be sent out to hundreds of individuals and also organizations that represent police and law enforcement agencies throughout Alaska, throughout the northern part of the country, the lower 48, and will also reach just about every police department in the U.S. I'm not expecting a tremendous amount of people from Florida, but you will. What's interesting about this is there are people from this area who have ventured far and wide who will see an opportunity to come back to their home. So don't be too surprised if you do see people. It's not unheard of to hear of someone from Texas coming to this part of the country. They wise up and come up and cool off and find out this is a great place. And also, we know a lot of Midwestern people have dreamed of coming here, and so it's an opportunity for them to do that as well, and it's going to be an opportunity for Alaska natives as well. So we're looking forward to going through that. We'll spend about 5 weeks recruiting, after which we will take and evaluate all the resumes that come in and the cover letters, kind of see where their desire is, why they want this position, and whittle that down to about the top 15 to 20. I will personally, along with Rena, interview those individuals and develop a report for the city manager on the top 10 to 15, at which point we will go through and look at and try and identify the 3 to 5 most promising candidates for to bring to the community to interview. One of the things that I highly recommend as you go through this process is that you not only invite the candidate, but if they're married or have a significant other, make sure that they accompany them. It's a package deal usually, and we have found the number one reason why people turn jobs down is their spouse decides that they're not taking the job, not them. So it's a very important part, and it's going to be very important for you, and I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but that you put out your red carpet and that you really do show off your community, show off your hospitality, show off what makes you special. And it kept coming back down to the same thing, and that's the people of the community. It's a close-knit community that has to come through. And if people feel the hospitality and the embrace that we've been able to feel, it's going to go a long way to letting people know they've made the right decision in coming here to interview. And so that is going to be taking place. Right now we have it scheduled for the 27th. I would suggest a day on either side of that as well for get to know the community, tour for the candidates, an opportunity to meet people of the public, to have them come out and meet the candidates, talk to them, ask them questions. And I'm going to be working with the manager on as far as what a interview protocol will look like and what kind of an interview board would be appropriate to be able to offer Steve some advice and some feedback, because he's been very open and very clear to me that he doesn't want to make this decision without your input, without the community's input, without members of the elected body participating. So I think that's great. With that, be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions of Richard from John? Member Haverlick?
Well, one thing I forgot to talk during our interview, or one thing I forgot to say was, if a person is interested in Petersburg, they may want to look at the police report in the pilot to get an idea of what our crime wave is like. You know, sure. It's pretty unique to a small town, and it's, you know, for the most part it isn't much. You know? Yeah. But if someone is serious in law enforcement and want to know what we're doing and what happens here, that would be a good indicator.
Sure, that's a great idea. And just for backdrop, I was a city manager as well for 17 years from communities. The smallest community I worked in was 1,200, a staff of 3. I was one of those 3. And all the way up to a community of 40,000 in the Twin Cities where I had a staff of 300. And had the opportunity to hire many police chiefs and look at several departments, and I'll tell you that large or small, a lot of the problems are the same. We all worry about our kids. We all go through a phase with issues with teenagers. Every community faces issues of the economic stratification and some of the difficulties with transients and permanent. And I mean, it doesn't matter. It seems like wherever we go and the number of communities we work with, police issues are almost universal.
Any more questions of Richard or Nina? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to having you back in April.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to coming back.
All right.
See you in the
Might even
morning.
be some fishing that time of year.
Yeah, I can be talked into it.
Hopefully it's going to stop raining today.
Oh, yeah. It almost never rains here. So April 27th?
Okay, that brings us to board, commission, and committee reports, and I believe today the Transportation Committee had a meeting.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Mr. Woods.
Could I still speak under visitors' views unrelated?
Sure. I didn't see a hand fly up earlier when I asked, but yeah.
Won't take any more of your time than I have to. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Borough Manager Giesbrecht, I'd like to read a little short letter that I have that I wrote to the Assembly. Dear Mr. Mayor Jensen.
Excuse me. Could you state your name for the audience?
Sorry, Ed Wood.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Borough Manager Giesbrecht. Alaska Mental Health Trust Land Office, Senior Resource Manager Paul Slenkamp, has asked me as a co-founder of the Midcoff Highway Homeowners Association to move forward the trust resolution to you asking for approval of Petersburg for the Trust U.S. Forest Service proposed land exchange. On 12 February 2013 at the Petersburg Airport, Mr. Slenkamp distributed to me, Dave Holmes, Michelle Funt, and Suzanne West the Trust and Forest Service's preferred alternative dated 4 September 2012. Mr. Slenkamp indicated to us that a wide range of interest from the Alaska Congressional Delegation, Forest Service District Rangers, various city councils and chambers of commerce, and the Tongass Futures Roundtable had bought off on their preferred alternative. Those are his words. We believe that their preferred alternative takes into account the then City of Petersburg's concerns as addressed in City Resolution 1922, dated 8 March 2010, regarding the dispensation of 80 acres of trust property located upslope of 4 Mile Midcoff Highway. The 80 acres in question appears as part of the 3,385 acres identified in P1 of the 4 September 2012 Trust Forest Service preferred alternative and is included in the land exchange. I have that in this packet here. At this point, the preferred alternative also satisfies the concerns of the MHHA on the remaining steep, unstable slopes above our homes, Midcoff Highway, and the Tyee Hydroelectric Corridor, which is also identified in P1 of the land exchange. The trust resolution is a resolution of support and is asking for approval of Petersburg for the proposed land exchange. The MHHA is moving forward in good faith by presenting the trust resolution for borough consideration of approval for their alternative, preferred alternative dated 4 September 2012.
Thank you.
And I have a packet of each for, you want them now or should I give them to Kathy?
You could pass them out, Ed, if you would, please. Any questions of Ed Woods from the Assembly members? Mr. Hogue, did you hear that all right?
I heard about 95% of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
John Holmes is here.
I'll make sure you get that.
Thanks, Ed.
I have a question for you.
Member Walden.
Oh, is Mental Health Trust liable for landslides that come down on the road there?
I can't answer that question for sure.
Because I was wondering if we end up taking responsibility on that, is the liability then ours? Just a question.
If I may, Ed, because this is probably a question you may be best answering, is actually what the issue is actually a land swap. It never enters into the hands of the borough.
Okay.
It's a swap from mental health ownership to Forest Service ownership.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Did I say that properly?
As far as I could tell.
Any more questions? Yeah. Member Flint.
This is what you've been hoping for, right?
Yes, it
You've
is.
been working all these years? Okay, thank you.
Unless it changes. But right now.
So is it pretty close to a totally done deal then, Ed?
Well, Mr. Mayor, it's got a ways to go. It's a 64-step process, apparently, 3 to 5 years total. Mr. Slenkamp indicated it could be another 2 to 2.5 years. They're in the process of appropriating $2 to $4 million of, I guess, trust money to follow through with appraisals and stuff like that. But and then there's a public process. They will issue their best interest decision May, June, somewhere like that. Mr. Slenkamp said that the Forest Service would be coming forth with their process sometime around the same time frame. So there is a public process to go through yet. Let's see.
Perseverance, I guess.
Well, we have hopes.
Sticking with it. Thanks, Ed. Okay, now we're on to board, commission, and committee reports, and I believe the Transportation Committee had a meeting today, and Dave Kensinger is going to give us an update.
Thank you, Mayor and Assembly members. I'm Dave Kensinger, Lot 1 Keene Channel Subdivision. Yes, we did have a meeting today, and we basically reiterated our position that we took back in August when you guys were council, and which is pretty simple. We're supporting a concept called core service, which calls for requesting that we have 2 ferries out of Prince Rupert from May through the end of September. This is what was promised to us 10 years ago. It's a very simple thing to have happen. When we went up to Juneau, we had quite a bit of interest in it. It's not that hard of a request. The second part of that proposal deals with the fair weather. If the fair weather is alive and running, we would like to see it come to Petersburg. And we'd like to see it come from the 1st of May to the end of September, ideally. We'd like it to come Tuesday and Friday, but understanding that, we'd like to at least request Tuesday service. And then we had a couple other questions that we would like to prep you with for your upcoming trip to Southeast Conference. And one is, in light of the changes with the Alaska class ferry, I guess what we need to know here in Petersburg is, what is the plan for the replacement of the mainline fleet? What are you planning on doing? We have 50-year-old vessels, you know, you've gone back and forth on all these other things. Maybe it's time to kind of clue us in on what your plan for the future is, if you have one. And then the next question that was brought up by one of the members, and we all thought it was a pretty good idea, why hasn't the state picked up the option to purchase the surplus IFA ferry? It's a very inexpensive ferry with the possibility that fair weather might not be running this summer or for a while. It could definitely supplement the system. And then the next question that we'd like to ask the Assembly is, in light, we discussed the Cake access and the road project that's upcoming, and I guess we wanted to know as a committee what you want us to do, or if you don't want us to do anything at all, I guess. We're all plan on attending the meeting if possible on Thursday at 3:30 as individuals, but if you have anything else, we're seeking direction from you guys.
Any ideas from the Assembly members for Transportation Committee being involved in the Cake Road? Is that meeting tomorrow or is it Thursday? The 20th?
Thursday.
Thursday?
Yeah, I got confused. There's a teleconference tomorrow.
Any questions of Dave? I have one. Are you going to have give us a formal list of the questions you want
Yes.
to present?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I will.
That would be good.
I'll send it to you first thing tomorrow.
Another question, I was approached by a employee of the ferry system, and the person encouraged me to contact the Alaska Marine Highway System and ask why the Kennecott doesn't do whistle stops when it comes through Petersburg. Has the Transportation Committee looked into that at all?
No, we haven't. We've talked about it in the past, but kind of the answer is they're going across the Gulf now. They're not going through Southeast Alaska. So the only time they go, they're basically going right across the Gulf down to Bellingham. The only time they come into Southeast is when they have to do a crew change. And so they're really not even transiting right by our dock like they used to in years past.
Okay, well, maybe it's just this time of the year the employee kind of made it sound like the Kennecott, when it comes north, every other week goes through Ketchikan and stops,
Yeah.
goes up Chatham Straits, bypasses, so they don't have to
Right.
drive through Wrangell Narrows.
Right.
And then they go to Juneau and lay over 8 hours, so they would have time if there was passengers, but
Yeah, they would have time. Yes, so we've been successful in doing that in the past. But the one thing I know when we've looked at this in the past, the thing that we need is something consistent.
Okay.
In other words, that's, yes, definitely in the wintertime you would supplement. A lot of times in the Kennecott, the reasoning why it wouldn't work in years past was that you essentially had two ferries following each other. In other words, they were right on top of each other in their scheduling. But they're really trying to do this cross. They have a lot of ridership with transferring military from the interior down, and that's the bulk of the passengers that are on that vessel right now. And that's been wildly popular with several of the legislators up in the interior. So it's kind of they kind of don't want to do anything with that.
yeah, and they have the horsepower, the
Right,
ship.
yes.
Yeah, if you get a list of your concerns together, I'll be going to Southeast
Okay.
Conference, and I
Great.
will bring them to the
Okay.
meetings.
Okay.
Thanks. Any more
Okay.
questions of Mr. Kinsinger? Member Haverlick.
Hi. Two things. On the ferry that's being sort of surplus that we might have the option for, do you know what they're asking for that, or?
Well,
And does it work?
But yeah, no, it was used by IFA for quite a few numbers of years. It came down to South Mitkoff. It's been costing them a lot of money just to hang on to it in insurance and whatnot. The state looked at it a few years ago, but they didn't feel that it met any of the missions that they had at the time, I think was the way they phrased it.
Okay. And then the second one I had was the Cake EIS and road. The 40 million doesn't even cover the ferry from here to Cake, or from here to Kupernoff. We would have to get extra monies to put that in, and it just, in going through a roadless area, it just sounds very undoable. Is there any realism to any of this?
My understanding is, yes, the 40 million right now would just buy a one lane, what they call a Pioneer Road,
Right.
with turnoffs, and no connection from Kupernoff Island to Mitkoff Island. And I have no idea. I mean, that's where I guess what I'm asking you guys is, what do you want us to do anything with this, or do you guys, it's kind of a political hot potato. I mean, we don't have any problem giving you advice, but I think you guys get paid the big bucks to make these type of decisions.
I'm just wondering if now is the proper time, or if we wait until farther into the environmental impact statement process, when we have, more public hearings and public comment. My understanding is it is just going to be an 18-foot wide gravel road, and mainly for supposedly maintenance for the power line.
Right.
So no ferries included in the $40 million plan from the state at this point, anyway.
Right. The only thing that I'd point out is that once the road is built, then it's a lot easier to make it a 24-foot road and pave it, and so there's just so that little thought in your minds when you're thinking about this in the future.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to the consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda. It's approval of GCI's land lease, 5-year annual rent adjustment. This is the first 5-year rate adjustment for the property since the property was developed. The original 5-year rental rate was 10% of the property value. and the land was assessed at $40,500, resulting in a $4,050 annual rent rate. Based on vacant land, that was that assessment with no improvements. This new 5-year rate change recognizes the value of the improvements placed on the property since February of 2008. The 2013 assessed value for the property is $341,000, resulting in a 5-year lease rate of $34,100 annually. Have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Will the clerk call the roll?
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
John Hope,
Yes.
John Heverly.
Yes.
Okay, passes unanimously. Report of other officers, there's none. The mayor's report, we have appointments to Borough Planning Commission. There are 7 positions on the commission to be filled. Letters of interest have been received from 6 confirmed residents. Those residents are David Kinsinger, Susan Thomason, Donna Malhoit-Laubin, Ron Bushman, Otis Marsh, and James Dimko. There was an additional letter of interest from a resident that does not appear to meet the 1-year residency requirement. So without any objection from the assembly, I would like to appoint all of the people that applied for this, and I would like to name Susan Thomason as the chairperson of this commission. Is that no objections from the assembly? Did you hear that, Member Hogue?
I can't.
You can't?
I can't. I do hear. No objection.
Great. Just want to make sure you have your input. Okay, so we will put those 10 people, or those 6 people on the Borough Planning Commission. And that is, the requirement there, I believe, is you have to have your APOC paperwork filled out within 30 days. Is that correct, Kathy?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, appointments to the hospital board. There are 3 vacancies on the board. 1 letter of interest has been received from Christine Kissinger. I'd like to, without any opposition from the appointment, or from the assembly, appoint Christine Kissinger to the hospital board. See no objections. Christine Kissinger is appointed to the hospital board. Okay, now we have Land Selections Committee. This is an ad hoc committee that will investigate and recommend to the assembly what state lands within the borough boundaries should be acquired by the borough. 10 letters of interest have been received. They are from Sam Bungie, Rick Braun, Jim Strumdahl, Ron Bushman, Liz Cabrera, Dave Kinsinger, Mike Bangs, Robin Leakley, Donna Malloy-Laubin, and Gerald Laubin. Without any objection from the assembly, I would like to appoint those 10 people and name Rick Braun as the chairperson of this committee. Seeing no objections, that is what will take place. Assembly appointments. The following appointed positions were used by the prior City of Petersburg to provide City Council member involvement and representation. Does the Assembly want to continue these representative positions until resolved later in the calendar year? And if so, do you want to make the appointments this evening? Last meeting, or the meeting before, we had kind of a, what would you call it, a process that the city manager proposed to us for keeping committees seated, and we've been going through that whenever these boards have been having a meeting and starting the process. So it seems like we should wait until we get responses from the people involved in those boards. So if the assembly would like, unless they would like to do something different, we could just, if everybody's happy with the positions that they have on these committees, or maybe some of the 2 of the new assembly members would like to put their name in for a couple. I wouldn't mind getting off of the motor pool committee and possibly the harbor board. I'd like to stay involved in the Southeast Conference and Alaska Municipal League, those representations. Member Walhuter.
If it pleases the mayor, I'll take your position on the harbor board if that's no conflict of interest, seeing how I'm well acquainted with the proceedings here.
That sounds good to me. Kathy,
Okay.
did you get that? Okay, and there's one vacant spot. There's no liaison to the Parks and Rec Board, and these might only be for 2, 3, 4 months. It depends on how the process goes for deciding which boards we're going to keep, or committees.
Mr. Mayor, I would serve on as the liaison to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board.
Thank you, Member Lakadakis. So, moving down the list, it looks like all the positions are filled up to Finance Committee. So, Sue Flint, Nancy Strand, and then there is one vacancy, and the alternate is Member John Hogue. John, would you want to be filling that vacant spot so you're not just an alternate?
That would be fine.
Do we have to have an alternate for that? Is anybody interested in being the alternate?
The alternate just kind of preps them for the next vacancy.
Right. Well, we just did that. Okay, we need an elected official. Uh-oh, I lost my notes here. Elected official to the Local Emergency Planning Committee, and that's vacant. Is there anybody that would like to be involved in the Emergency Planning Committee? Elected official. Well, it looks like it might.
I don't mind doing that.
Okay.
In all my free time.
Member Strand would like to be appointed to the Local Emergency Planning Committee.
It's just a liaison, right? Oh, no, I'm be a member?
I believe so,
Okay.
from what it says here in the agenda. Okay, and then there's a declaration of vacancy on the PEDC board. The resident member at large position for the Economic Development Council is vacant. This is an assembly appointment with a 3-year term. Letters of interest to fill the vacancy should be submitted to the mayor or the borough clerk. So we're shopping for people interested. Mayor's designee to the Economic Development Council per the bylaws of the PEDC. This position runs concurrent to the mayor's term. Currently, this position is held by Assembly Member Nancy Strand, appointed by retired Mayor Dwyer. Nancy, if you're willing to
It's
stay in
interesting.
that position, we'll appoint you to that. Okay, manager's report. Due to his trip to Juneau, the borough manager has kind of just a short summary of our trip, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those of you not aware, Mayor Jensen, Assemblymember Haverleck, and myself went to Juneau last week to attend kind of the annual process of asking the legislature for money. It appears we did meet with, Senator Egan, Senator Stedman, Representative Kathy Munoz, Representative Gertula and Senator Meyer's offices. The elected officials were not available. Representative Wilson was not available at all, and we couldn't even meet with her office. Everybody was really welcoming, listened to our needs. What we walked away with is that money is going to be really, really tight this year. The chance of funding on the police station is probably fairly low. Again, we had a lot of feedback of, yes, sounds like you need a new police station and jail. Yes, we understand the need, but the state's really ramping back its capital spending, at least in this year's upcoming budget. So, not exactly sure how that'll turn out. We got a lot of, like I said, a lot of interested folks. We may be surprised, but at this point, we're taking a real hard look at making sure we have a plan to keep the building alive for at least another year. One part of that trip as well is we is the Alaska Municipal League, and during that meeting, AML brings in a series of speakers, legislators for the most part, to come in and kind of talk about the state of the budget and what's going to go on. Lieutenant Governor Treadwell was there, Senator Machichi, thank you, and House Leader Chenault, all were there and pretty much echoed the same thing that we heard from the folks we met with individually, that money was tight. A lot of the money was going north for some pretty sizable projects, and a lot of the legislature itself's focus was on the oil tax and several different varieties of a natural gas pipeline. They haven't necessarily decided on which one they want to push, small diameter or large diameter. So again, kind of a similar message. Money's going to be hard to come by, particularly for this year and possibly for a couple of years. So not trying to be doom and gloom, but it's one of those things that we're going to kind of listen to what they say, and we'll see how the session goes. But that's pretty much it from the trip, unless John or Mark, did I miss anything?
No, doom and gloom was it.
Trying to. Also, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, Carl was going to kind of speak to our little water issue, and if you
Sure,
kind of give the community an update on how that went and stuff.
Everybody seems to be healthy.
Mayor and Assembly, thank you, Mr. Manager, for the intro. As everybody knows, we had an issue last week, and I thought I would offer to Steve to talk about a little bit what we do in the water utility, how we know that our water system is safe. And we've gotten a lot of questions, obviously, over the last few days about what we do and how we do it. And so it's a good opportunity to just get the word out on how we know that our system is 100% now, and explain a few things about what we do. The testing that we do, we have a detailed testing plan, sampling plans. The operators at the plant are certified by the state. It's not an insignificant process to become certified. They take their jobs very seriously, and they were as shocked, more shocked than anybody else when the test last week did come up positive for bacteria. We do a tremendous amount of testing. On a daily basis, we test for chlorine, fluoride, pH, alkalinity, and color in our water. All those tests are performed in-house by our operators. On a weekly basis, we do routine sampling within the distribution system for bacteria. That routine sample was the one that came up positive for bacteria last week. The test that is used for that bacteria sample is taken to our local hospital lab. The lab is certified to do those tests, has done a multitude of them over the years, and this is the first one that I can recall in my 20 years with the local municipality that we've had one come up positive for bacteria. The test that they perform is a basic presence-absence test. It doesn't give you a number of coliform bacteria found in the sample. It just tells you that there is or is not coliform bacteria in that sample. And the test is sensitive. If there's one of those organisms in the sample in 100 milliliters of water, it will come up positive, but it won't tell you how many of those organisms exist. A lot of other tests that we do are quarterly, annually, every 3 years, or even on a longer basis, depending on what the regulation is that we're trying to meet. There are a multitude of regulations that we have to adhere to in the water utility, and that are handed down to us by the state and the federal government. Additionally, the chlorine residual in our system, chlorine is the disinfectant that we use to make sure that everything is clean. That residual is monitored on a continuous basis, 24 hours a day, going into and coming out of our storage tank, as well as one other location in the downtown area that has a monitor on it. The importance of that, of knowing that residual is there, lets us know that the water that we're putting out is clean. If there's bacteria in the water, then that residual drops rapidly. So as long as it's at a certain level, we know that, or the indication is that everything is safe. And also on a 3-year rotation, we're required to have what's called a sanitary survey done at our treatment plant. This year, DC staff came through last October, and they basically crawl through the plant and talk to staff, look at all of our procedures, all of our testing, all of our equipment, all of our maintenance and operations practices and make sure that we are doing things the way that they should be done. We haven't gotten a report from that October survey yet, which is actually a good thing. If we're doing something wrong, they tell you right away. So I think we're probably looking very good there. You can't have testing without reporting. We are under the watchful eye of DEC, and we do report to them every month on all the test results that we get. The exception, I guess, is to the monthly reporting is if we get a trigger for immediate notice like we had last week with the E. coli detection in the water. And as you saw, there are things that happen right away when that happens. Boil water notices are sent out. Retesting occurs immediately, and as it turned out, the follow-up samples were clean, and the boil water notice was rescinded on Friday. As I said, there's a lot of regulations of public water systems that we adhere to and that we know makes us safe. Private water systems in the community out the road are not regulated by DEC, and even though people may drink from those sources a lot, there's a risk to that. Bottled water is also not regulated nearly as much as public water systems, and so even though it is safe, we have to go through a lot more hoops in our treatment process than bottled water companies do. The natural sources in town, every natural source contains E. coli, it contains Giardia and Cryptosporidium. They're all very nasty bugs that if you ingest them at the wrong time and your immune system doesn't kick in, it can make you very sick. So all the regulations that we adhere to tell me that we're making safe water. It's a very hard actually for us to fall down and not produce safe water with the good people that we have at the treatment plant. Petersburg has an excellent track record of meeting those regulations, and we've actually had some reduced testing requirements due to that fact. So in conclusion, I just wanted to reiterate, the water is safe. It's been tested and retested and tested again, and it's safe to drink. Water department staff take their jobs very seriously, do an excellent job for us, and provide safe water. And I wanted to thank the community for their patience and understanding with the inconvenience of a boil water notice last week. It's something that we don't deal with here very often. Another testament to the quality service that we get from the staff. You know, it's the whole process of the boil water notice is to be safe and to take precautions so that nobody does get sick if that sample is truly showing bacteria in our system. So any questions about the water system can be directed to me at Public Works or at the water plant. Dwayne Powers and Mike Bell, the operators up there, do an excellent job, and they can answer any question that you might have. Any questions at this time?
Any questions for Mr.
Mr.
Mayor?
Hagerman. Yes.
Just to give you a hard time because I feel bad when I don't. Why do you think the test showed that aberration?
It's really hard to say. There's a multitude of ways that the sample could have been compromised. It could have been the sample bottle. It could have been the way the sample bottle was handled during the sampling, after the sampling, before the utility even picked it up. Could have been transferring in the lab itself. Mm-hmm. There's so many things that it could have been. It's really hard to pinpoint it to what it was. But I'm just happy that the follow-up testing showed that the system is fine.
And you're confident that the system wasn't the problem?
I am, yeah. I am.
And this is one thing, just to jumping in the agenda for recognition, I'd really like to thank you, you and your staff for all the hard work you do, and and for being so good at what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to reiterate that we were out of town at the time that the announcement came out, and yet we knew right away, and we also knew when water was safe to drink again. So you did a very good job of letting people know what the safety issue was and when it was safe to go back to drinking water. I think that worked really well.
It's a good feeling. Okay, thank you, Carl. I've got one, just to add to Steve's report a little bit about the trip to Juneau. Yeah, it's not like it has been in the past when you've got a senator that's in a strong position. That affected our feelings of joy when we went to Juneau. But I think there's a slight chance if we keep working on it, we'll hopefully get some funding for the police department, and we'll have a few visits with legislators next week when we go to Juneau for Southeast Conference. I've got a few scheduled. Not that it'll make a difference, but we'll keep putting a plug in for the police station. Okay, and that brings us to unfinished business. Item A, the Borough. The Juneau appeal, there's no new information, but on our trip to Juneau, I had a chance to talk with a couple of the commissioners on the local boundary commission. One of them is Senator Machiki's chief of staff, Simmons is his last name, and Bob Hartrack from Borough. And they reiterated again that the local boundary commission has never lost a case, so we're maybe feel a little bit more optimistic about Juneau's appeal, so we won't know that until sometime this summer. Future transition items, the Assembly approved process to gain public participation in determining if advisory board should be retained by the borough has been implemented, and I guess we talked about that a little bit earlier. And that's the process that we'll go through to decide if these boards are going to be ongoing or if they will be disbanded over the next year. Redistricting is the next item. There was a court decision on Friday. We got an email about 5 o'clock Friday, and trying to read 50 pages of lawyer talk. Didn't get anything out of it, but our redistricting attorney told me today that it was good news that the 5 justices told the redistricting board that they are going to redraw Southeast. So that is good information. The U.S. Supreme Court is looking at the Voting Rights Act that Alaska has to abide by. There's not that many states in the country that have to do it, but we're luckily one of them. And if that goes away, it might be made a little bit easier for elections and whatnot. But the redistricting of Southeast, they were told to disregard the Voting Rights Act and go on the state constitution, which is compactness and socioeconomical ties. So we'll see where that puts us in the future. SEPA and D. Hiddle and Associates O&M report, no new information. And that moves us on to Ordinance 2013-4, an ordinance implementing an area-wide room tax in the amount of 4% throughout the Petersburg Borough and providing for the administration, collection, and reporting of the transient room tax. This is the second reading. Need a motion to adopt in second reading.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to adopt 2013-4.
Second.
Okay, it's been Mr. Haberlick made the motion, and it's been seconded by Member Flint to adopt Ordinance 2013-4 in the second reading. Any discussion? Okay, we have one letter here from Island Point Lodge. We'll read this into the record. It says, my understanding of the proposed transient room tax excuse me, for lodges is as follows. The city formula uses 15% of the gross package cost to a customer taxed at 4% for each person in a room. I feel that is unfair. Presently, Petersburg hotels and B&Bs are taxed by the room and not the person. They can have 3 people or 2 couples in a room, and the tax is calculated on the room itself, not the number of people in the room. I am going to demonstrate the unfairness of the transient room tax to the lodges through the following examples. Example of a lodge package with 3 men in a room using $2,000 for a 6-night trip per person. 15% of the above package is $300. 4% transient room tax is $12. $12 times 3 people in the room is $36. Example of hotels and B&Bs in Petersburg, just for discussion, if the room cost is $100 per night, they are in that range. 3 people in a room could be 4 if the dollar difference is small for the people. Anyway, 100 times 4% transient room tax is $4 per night. $4 times 6 nights equals $24 for the same number of night of a lodge stay. Lodges are being taxed higher than the hotels and B&Bs. So we kind of talked about this at the third reading of 2013-2, when this ordinance was 2. Was there more? Oh, I better read the whole thing, huh? I was getting confused already. Hotel and B&B rooms have televisions, some have refrigerators and microwaves, telephones, air conditioning, daily services, larger and more comfortable accommodations and conveniences. The rooms in a lodge have the bare minimum of space, services, and conveniences, a tad better than sleeping in a tent. Just a place to lay down and sleep, keep dry and warm, no luxuries like that of a hotel and B&B accommodations. The proposed formula is discriminatory towards lodges operating in the Petersburg Borough. The taxes for lodges is higher than the hotels and B&Bs in town. The transient room tax that we are going to charge our clients should be no higher than the taxes that are being charged in town. They should be lower. This is from Frank Stelmach, Island Point Lodge. So it's been read into the record. Any comments by any assembly members? Jody, have you had a chance to look at this?
I did, and I actually called the 2 hotels today and asked them what their minimum price was for a room per night for 3 people, and the Tides Inn was $100 for a room without a view with 2 beds. The Scandia House is actually $160 per night, and for 6 nights, that's $960 times 4% is $38.40. So that's above the $36 for the lodges that he was giving the example for.
So using the 15%, like we reduced it from 30 in this ordinance, is definitely more in line with what the hotel. So and it's pretty comparable.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Haverlick.
Yeah, the owner of this lodge from MA's Maryland is where he's from.
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, sorry. I always get those confused. I think Jody's exactly right that this is less than we're charging in town, and also it doesn't account that they have a main lodge where all these people go in for those conveniences and have access to those. So even though it may not be in their room, they still have access to a lot of amenities that a hotel offers. I think this is more than fair, and we cut it in half from our original proposal.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Any more comments from assembly members? Member Hoag, are you keeping up with us here?
Still with you, no comment.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no more discussion, will the clerk please call the roll?
Nancy.
Yes.
Sue. Yes. John Haverlick.
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
John Holt.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Cindy.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to new business, a resolution, 2013-5, a resolution to the Alaska State Legislature requesting reappropriation of designated legislative grant 11-DC-334. The resolution requests that the approximate grant balance of $1.4 million from the construction of the new fire EMS facility be reappropriated towards construction of a police jail facility. Just add a little bit to that. When we were in Juneau, we talked to Senator Stedman about this. He's the senator that got the money appropriated for the fire hall. Also with our current Senator Dennis Egan and Beth Gertula's staffer. Beth wasn't in, and they said this is the cleanest way to transfer the money is by reappropriation, and there's not really a chance that it'll go away. It has to be put back in the district and then given back to us for the fire hall project. So we need a motion to adopt resolution 213-5.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution 2013-5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by, I'll call it by Member Strand. Any more discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I was just in talking with the people we talked with and their aides. I think we'll be very fortunate if we even get this. I know it was originally appropriated to us, but those aides and legislators are looking for any money they can to give to their constituents. So I know there's going to be a lot of people wanting this 1.4 million, and I really hope that we can maintain and keep it.
Any more comments? I didn't get that feeling that another legislator was going to try to come and grab the money away if it got put in our district. Senator Stedman was pretty, he said he'd really be surprised. So I guess there might be a...
I hope so, but yeah, the thing is everyone's clamoring for money.
Yeah. So any more discussion? The clerk will call the roll.
Kurt,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
John Hogue,
Yes.
John Haverlick,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
and Sue.
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously. Now we're on to Resolution 2013-6, a resolution authorizing the Borough Manager to amend lease agreement ADL 106355. It's a shooting range lease. That's to allow for proposed range improvements to proceed and updating the lease language as needed to reflect borough incorporation. The resolution will update the 2004 Range Improvements Development Plan and change the leasing name from the City of Petersburg to the Petersburg Borough. Need a motion to adopt Resolution 213-6.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Walhooter to adopt Resolution 2013-6. Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Kurt,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
John Hogue,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and John.
Yes.
Okay, the next item on our agenda under new business is authorization to send a letter to FERC opposing relicensing of a hydro project at or near Thomas Bay to Cascade Creek. A draft letter for the Assembly consideration was going to be available tonight. That will be available at the March 4th meeting. So the deadline to respond is March 18th, so that still gives us plenty of time to appeal the process. Authorization, item D, authorization to issue letter of support for Forest Service funding proposals. The Raven Roost Path and Omer Creek Trail. Forest Service is requesting borough support for 2 grant projects they are currently working on through the Federal Lands Access Program. The first is the Ravens Roost Trail, of which the borough would be a grant co-signer. Because the borough is an adjacent land manager to the project, the Ravens Roost project will have an annual cost, and I've got to go to, of $106, I think.
160.
160, there it is. I'll get back on the right page here. There you go, the digital thing isn't working for us, sir. Bear with me. We're trying to get this figured out, Donnie. We're going to have to get a little bit, I knew that ahead of time. Anyway, what page is it on, folks? There we go.
57.
160 for paint and man hours from the borough to maintain a crosswalk to the trailhead. The grant will include the original design and installation costs of crosswalk signs and street painting to keep people safe as they walk across Sandy Beach Road from the Sandy Beach Park. The other project is the Omer Creek Trail, with its trailhead outside of Service Area 1 at or near 21 Mile Mitkoff Highway. There would be no annual cost to the borough for this project. A map and narrative explaining the project are made part of this meeting packet. So we need authorization, if it's the council's wish, to send a letter of support. Is there a motion for that?
I so move.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved by Member Flint, seconded by Member Haverlick to send a letter of authorization to issue a letter of support to the Forest Service trail funding proposals. Okay, now Thomas Bay Power Authority, a request for budget amendment consideration. Thomas Bay Power Authority is requesting consideration to amend the non-net billable expense budget for 2013 by $10,000. The added expense would be shared equally between the city and boroughs of Wrangell and Petersburg. Need a motion so we can have discussion on this.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Member Walhooter, seconded by Member Haverlick to authorize the budget amendment. Any discussion? And there is a letter in the package here. Seeing we have a Thomas Bay Power Authority member in the audience, Joe, would you like to speak to this, or? This is Joe Nelson, Power and Light Superintendent, and Paul is here as well.
Thank you, thank you, Mayor. I just this afternoon rechecked the code to see if it spoke to this at all. It does speak to the annual budget, and it speaks to the an emergency amendment of the budget. I really don't deem this as an emergency. This is something that kind of came up unexpectedly, but isn't an emergency in my mind, no. So I really don't see any basis for changing the budget mid-year.
Okay, thank you. Seeing that the president of Thomas Bay Power Authority is in the audience, I'd like to recognize Mr. Southland if he would like to comment.
Yeah, if I might, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I guess actually your brother, John, is president of Thomas Bay Power Authority.
Oh, you're the...
I'm currently the general manager, and what is being asked has been requested by the commission. You do have the memo in front of you, so I won't reiterate all of it, but they felt it was inappropriate to change working conditions for one of our employees to fit within the budget based on a change in her marital status. The budget was formed when our office manager was a single gal. She's married now, and our IBEW contract requires that we cover all of a spouse and their mate with health insurance, and that's what prompted this. We build our budget very tight, and that took us to a point that was going to take us over that budget. What we're asking for is spending authority beyond the $110,000. We're not necessarily even asking for money from the two communities. Thomas Bay Power Authority receives a certain amount of funding back annually from our insurance as a rebate. This past year, that was $5,821, which is going to make our budget come very, very close, or our funds come very, very close to matching what our expenses will be, but they will be in excess of $110,000. And they may be in excess of that additional funding, but it will be in probably less than $1,000 or $2,000. What's required by us is that we communicate with our communities, and I guess for lack of a better term, a staff reviewers, that we anticipate that we're going to exceed our spending authority, and we're asking that you agree to raise our spending authority.
Thank you, Mr. Southland. Any questions of Mr. Walhooter, Member Walhooter?
Is this a one-time expenditure, or do you see this going into perpetuity?
The increase in the budget?
Yeah.
I think that is the question, Mr. Assemblyman. Our budget will be larger based on this marital status if we maintain the same employee. We do have, and your commission, the Thomas Bay Power Authority Commission, is taking a different tack with our primary funding agency, which is SEPA, in that they fund the position that I occupy, the general manager's position, 100%, because it's an operations position to the power generation facility. Our office manager is doing more and more work that is directly attributable to operations. And so this year I have developed two non-net billable budgets. One that's just exactly as we've done in the past, where the two communities, Wrangell and Petersburg, simply split those expenses, and another one that's apportioning a fairly significant portion of those expenses to SEPA. That budget will go before the Thomas Bay Power Authority Commission at their March 5th meeting, and then depending on what actions they take, will be forwarded to the two communities for their decision. So I guess the straight answer is yes. Our non-net billable budget will be larger.
Any more comments or questions of Mr. Southland? Member Flint?
How does this relate to the emergency thing and that Mr. Nelson was talking about? I'm a little confused about which code Joe was referring to. Is it Thomas Bay Power or our borough?
The City and Borough of Wrangell and the Borough of Petersburg have the same identical language in the code that creates Thomas Bay Power Authority. And so it's the whole thing, and it talks about the budgetary process and that sort of thing. And so, again, I can understand the situation. It is a change, unanticipated, but it does exceed the budget, and there are other ways to stay within the budget.
Thank you, Joe.
Sorry.
And I guess my response would be that the commission's position was different than that.
I guess my comment would be that the commission would have a different opinion than possibly the assembly might. I mean, this is going to be an extra $10,000 out of the Petersburg's budget to fund somebody's spouse, if I'm understanding this right, because of the increased cost of the insurance?
Well, firstly, we were asking for a total of $10,000 increase in spending authority. Half of that would be potentially the Borough of Petersburg's responsibility. As I've already indicated, we have $5,821 from other sources that have come into our account. As I understand our ordinance, we derive our spending authority through our two communities. So I'm looking for your approval to increase our spending authority, and if it's a separate motion to fund that, I would look for that as well. But I would at least be looking for authorization to spend an extra $10,000.
Funded for by the two municipalities.
Possibly.
Possibly if the $5,800 would cover part of it. I guess, but another part of my question was with the reason that this is costing us more is because of the insurance, basically? Is that the biggest?
As you know, from the spreadsheet that you have in front of you, that is our largest increased expense that was not anticipated. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions of Mr. Southland?
I have one. I was just curious to know if this situation has occurred before, and if so, how often?
No, it has not occurred before. Our current office manager is the only one that is budgeted for in this position, and she's been with Thomas Bay for 11 years as a single woman. And
I wasn't referring to the marital status of. I'm comfortable about that whole discussion. I don't think you can consider somebody's marital status and whether or not you're going to hire them or have them as part of your staff. My question was, have you exceeded your budget and come to the assembly and asked for a higher spending limit?
No.
Can I ask Joe a question? Joe, you said there might be other alternatives for funding this?
During the discussion before the council or the commission took its vote, we did discuss reducing hours.
And in your opinion, is that a viable option?
In my opinion, and especially since the money would come out of my power and light budget, yes, they could reduce hours without any major impact to the office.
Okay. Now to you, Mr. Sutherland, is it? Do you think that would be detrimental to her desire to stay with Thomas Bay Power Authority?
I can't speak to whether it would be detrimental
her desire to stay with us, but I can tell you that it'll be detrimental to our operations, and that the Thomas Bay Power Authority Commission felt the same way.
Okay. Have you spoke to, I'm sorry,
no,
just
go
one
on.
more question. Have you spoke with the Wrangell Assembly yet, and what was their position?
I have not. I spoke with Mr. Giesbricht after the, I believe the Energy Roundtable here just a week or so ago, so you're the first people that have had taken this up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any more questions of Mr. Southland? Member Haverlick?
So, yes, this position with all its add-ons comes up to about $116,000, $117,000.
No, it does not.
The other expenses you're showing on the spreadsheet are just related to that area?
They're related to our commission activities. You'll see their D&O insurance there for the Thomas Bay Power Authority Commissioners, is travel for the commission, officer-related expenses for the commission activities. Yes, this position is 50% plus of that budget, but is not $110,000.
Thank you.
Any more questions of Mr. Southland? Seeing none, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any more discussion between the assembly members? Member Flint?
Mr. Mayor, so the motion that we have on the floor, is that just to let them extend their budget?
The Kathy over here has a comment.
I had a proposed amount for you, not just carte blanche that they could exceed. It is kind of put out here as 10,000, 5 from Wrangell, 5 from Petersburg.
Okay, and that was our motion?
The motion was to approve the budget amendment, so.
Okay.
And
Not just the
that's how
authority.
you're recording it.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, he said there was a $5,000 some odd dollar fund floating around someplace. Seeing
It
how
sounds
we're
like
the
a refund from the insurance company, if I understood right.
Correct.
So if we're the first community, can we grab that and say that will be our portion of the contribution, and then Wrangell will have to pick it? We don't have to tell them that, do we? Could you change your story when you go there?
That's a question
You are
for
on the
Mr.
record.
Nelson.
They're listening, right?
Well, I realize that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Okay. The way I see it is, if I'm understanding this spreadsheet right, on item line 1, wages and salaries of the office manager, 2013 it was $51,400, and it's going to be projected of $55,006. So that's basically we would be paying our part of a $4,000 odd raise. Anyway, that's my comment.
3,600.
Oh, 3,600.
3,600.
I guess they did the math for me. I should have read that.
Yeah, well, plus the overtime, and then the health benefits are. Assuming that goes with that.
So 4,000.
Also, the way the manager reads the spreadsheet, it looks to me if you totaled all the red figures up through this manager's position, it would come to $6,820, 58, whatever the percent a year is. Anyway, any more discussion from the assembly members? Does anybody need clarification on the spreadsheet to see if the numbers are right? I mean, if the numbers, just want to make sure that's what everybody's on the same page here. The increase amount.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a clarification that I need. So if we did not approve this additional expense, then they still would come back to us and apportion out the money? I'm not quite understanding what the whole process is. It sounded like there was, is it SEPA that will apportion out the money?
No, SEPA.
Mr. I think the way it works, Member Lakadakis, is I might maybe Mr. Nelson could explain it better if I'm wrong on this, but I think we have a joint resolution. It's the same in Wrangell as in Petersburg, that we will fund the Thomas Bay Power Authority position, and we each put $50,000 a year. And what this would do is knock that up to $55,000 per municipality.
I understand that. The gentleman, Mr. Southland, mentioned another review process where the funds would be apportioned out.
Can you step to the mic, state your name and who you represent, and answer?
Paul Southland, Thomas Bay Power Authority, and I think you're referring to my comments about there was a question about whether budget was going to continue to be increased, and then I continued forward with a discussion about how we're budgeting into fiscal year 14, and that we were going to be presenting a standard budget such as we are now, where the two boroughs at this point would be just simply splitting as what we call non-net billable expenses. I'm presenting to the Thomas Bay Power Authority Commission a different budget that would also apportion a portion of our current non-net billable directly to SEPA as an operation expense. What we have occurring now, and as an example, SEPA is not allowing, based on our office manager's job description, any charges to operations for that position. Although quite often we use that position in that manner. As an example, our submarine cable monitoring system had some difficulties with it over the past several months, and in early January we had a Ketchikan Public Utility crew come to the area and work on that equipment over a weekend. Well, our office manager was in the office over that weekend to do polling of the submarine cables because I was unavailable and out of the area. SEPA will not allow that charge back, so that's something right now that two communities are picking up wholly, that we are hoping a portion of that can be presented to them in the future. But for this budget, for this cycle, the communities of Wrangell and Petersburg are covering fiscal year 13.
Okay, that explains it better to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Southland. Any more discussion? The clerk call the roll.
John Haverlet.
No.
Sue.
No.
Kurt.
No.
John Hope.
Yes.
Mark.
No.
Nancy.
Yes.
And Cindy.
Yes.
Was it 4-3?
Fails.
Fails.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Member Hogue.
I would ask that we have a little more discussion and reconsider this item. I am deeply troubled by the fact that it sounds to me by omission we are telling Thomas Bay perhaps that they have to cut somebody's hours because of a change in marital status. And I am deeply concerned with the potential of that being challenged legally.
I don't know if technically, if you voted on the losing side of the vote, that you could open it up for discussion again. So I think it'd have to come from somebody on the prevailing side.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question on procedure on that. When would it be reconsidered? At our next meeting? Or tonight?
That, I don't know if you can bring it up right after the vote or if you have to wait till the next meeting.
You could actually, if you want to bring it up and you guys vote on it, you could address it either tonight or at the next meeting once, if you guys decide what you want to do. But your reconsideration has to be tonight, as far as if you're going to take it up again or not.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. So someone that voted on the prevailing side of the motion would have to ask for reconsideration, I believe.
That's fine.
So we need a motion from somebody that voted.
I will
Member
move. Move for reconsideration of the motion at our next meeting.
Is there a second?
I think you voted against it, though.
and that prevailed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does the person who seconds have to be on the prevailing side?
No.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Flint, seconded by Member Strand to bring up this issue again at our next meeting. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
This is for reconsideration. Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
John Haverler?
No.
John Hogue?
Yes.
Okay, it passes 6-1 to bring it up at our meeting on March 4th to reconsider the Thomas Bay Power Authority request for budget amendment consideration. So we will hear it again, Mr. Southland, on March 4th, and to those listening in the audience. Item 16, communications. We have a letter that was sent to us by George Cole. It's on the very back page of the agenda. He has 3 points. He wants to add Pappy's Landing Boardwalk as a public notice posting area. And 2 is to designate a specific harbor posting area. And 3, spell out what constitutes a public notice and who is responsible for posting and removing the notices. And it's in his letter, it says that most of the notifications that are posted at Pappy's Landing Boardwalk are fish and game notices and on and on. That I don't know what you'd call it, billboard, I guess, is at the very end of the pier. So we actually had a borough employee went out and looked at it, took pictures. It would be kind of difficult to get the posting all the way to the end of the dock if it was snowy, or might not be impossible. It might be inconvenient. But now we have a posting area at the trees. So I guess our what we need to discuss here is that, as far as location, is Pappy's, is that considered, the trees considered in the Pappy's area close enough to call it a posting area?
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
As well.
This is Mr. Giesbrick, the manager.
Yes, thank you. What we had set up to this point was an arrangement with the folks at the trees, where we could fax them our public notices. They would post it on their bulletin board in a weatherproof area that's accessible to the public. They were willing to do that. Kind of saves everybody time and money to not have to drive out there to actually do the posting. Our assumption was that any folks coming into the dock and the folks that live at Papke's, that would be a easier access for them and more easy for most people in that area to actually look at the posting. Mayor Jensen's correct that the board that's down there is at the end of the dock, and that would pose a little bit of a problem because it would involve an employee at this point to have to go down there to do the posting and walk it out to the end of the dock. So that's the kind of the background at this point. Kathy, what's our posting requirements at this point? Can you speak to?
The resolution you guys passed that Mr. Cole is speaking to actually the charter only sets out specifics for posting of ordinances. So from a staff's viewpoint, we looked at, well, if that's good for ordinances, it's probably good for our regular general posting notices also. So right now we don't have a posting requirement for meetings, more like public service announcements. We do have that stringent requirement to post for ordinances. I view the trees as a Papke's Landing area. However, some people do not. It's the dock. If it's the dock, then the people living in the Papke's neighborhood are going to have to walk out to the very end of that dock to look at the sign, which that's an inconvenience too. So we're going to have to get something resolved to meet the ordinance requirement, and then decide too if this posting of ordinances is also going to apply to all our public service announcements that we put out. Kind of how Mr. Cole's asking to define what a notice is. We could do that. We could say what is a public notice is something of vital importance, it's a new law, whereas our meeting postings are just public service announcements. But right now, we just carried forward the ordinance requirement, added extra postings. We're actually posting in more places than what we're required to by ordinance. It's just not out on Peace Landing dock.
Mr. Mayor? Member Haverly.
Yeah, just for, safety reasons, putting, especially in the winter, putting people, having notices out in these areas that are a little bit risky to get to, and then having people try to find them in an area that may cause a safety issue I think is a bad precedent for us to follow. And the other thing is, in this electronic age with the radio and the computer and everything else, written notices are almost they're ridiculous. So I think as long as we're meeting the electronic with the radio and the computer and in similar formats, that's the safest way to go and the most sane for this time and place in this area.
Any more comments? Member Walden?
Mr. Mayor, I was just thinking, I wonder if one of the good citizens of Pappy's Landing would like to volunteer to stop by the trees and pick up a copy of that ordinance and tack it on to the bulletin board at the end of the pier or something, so that we can accommodate our neighbors down the Narrows. I mean, I do sympathize with him that, if he comes in a skiff, it would be very convenient for him just to go up that steep ramp with full of snow and read the notice and then go home again, in case he doesn't have a radio or something. But maybe we could ask somebody in Pappy's to volunteer or something. But I think it would be risky to send one of our employees out there, plus time consuming and plus expensive when there's other alternatives. So.
Okay. Any more comments?
I may be making an incorrect assumption. Does Mr. Cole have internet service or not?
That I can not answer that question. Member Lakadakis. Yes, City Manager?
Only thing I can speak to is he's posted through the C-Cub Facebook page and email quite frequently. My assumption
So
then is
it's
he's
possible that he does. And the reason I'm asking that question is I'm wondering, would it be possible to set up a subscription service type setup where somebody could ask to be emailed notices and it would happen automatically?
That's something we could look into. We could set up it takes some doing, but I think it's something we could try to accommodate. I mean, it's going to be almost impractical for someone in my office. When you think of all the notices that we're putting out, you're going to have one department running out there every 20 minutes, putting something up. That's why I thought it was kind of convenient that the trees volunteered to do that. But, a subscription service might be, that doesn't get us around the charter requirement, though, when it comes to ordinances. I've still got to have a Pappy's Landing spot for posting those things.
So, just to add to the conversation, in the charter, I was looking through it this weekend, and it does say, and it's on page 106 under section 3.02 ordinance procedures, that Pappy's Landing will be a posting place. And if we're only required to post ordinances changes, then maybe that's all we have to post there. And I kind of like Member Walhooter's idea of maybe we could find somebody that lives in the Papkins area, like the owner did of the trees, and would be willing to get it electronically and post it for us. That's just a thought, but we have to, address these concerns.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Cole.
the
Yes.
other alternative is, I know that the harbor is looking into possibly purchasing a different posting board for the harbor area. If we bought another one and erected it out maybe more toward, on the inland side, off that dock area. The only thing is that it's going to get vandalized. And I don't know how much we want to go through that, but that's the only option I can see to make that, unless we can get someone that's volunteering to do that, would be to put that posting in on the beach there somewhere and plan on replacing it on a regular basis, because it will probably get shot up.
It could vandalize, you're right there. Any more discussion? And I don't know if we're going to take action on this tonight, but under communications, I suppose we could. Any more comments?
I just wanted to add
Member
one thing to
Walter?
what she said here. I'm sorry about beating this dead horse, but at least we'll have fulfilled our obligation. The sign will have been there. The postings will be there at the head of the dock. And if somebody wants to shoot it up and destroy it, at least that's something that we fulfilled our obligation.
So, Member Strand?
I think perhaps we should hold this over to the next meeting, which is the noon meeting, and it would be easier then for the denizens in these areas that are hard to read things at the trees. They could perhaps send something by whatever means of communication they have, or even come to the meeting and fill us in what would be a satisfactory compromise.
Well, it seems to me like the staff could look into the expense, but maybe you're right. Maybe we could hold this discussion over till the next meeting, but there's 2 other items on here we could address. If that's the wish of the assembly, we could just take item 1 until next meeting. I think it'll be pretty easy to address the item 2, his concern, designate a specific harbor posting area. I believe the harbor master is going to put the new billboard holder type thing down on her building or somewhere and post these notices.
Currently, we do post them. They're, like Kathy said, they are numerous. It is going to cover the whole outside wall here pretty soon. So we moved them inside because of the weather. We're open 24 hours a day. But our plan is to at some point put them outside, right outside the office, so they're accessible 24/7, and we have lights and all that. But I've looked into boxes, outdoor boxes to house these, and you're looking at $1,000 a piece to put them in there. And there's something that I can put right on the wall that's already pre-existing. If you're going to set them up on a have to put them on a rail or something like that, they could get fairly expensive. So anyway, that's the research I've done so far.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. I guess another thing before we decide how big this needs to be, I mean, spell out what constitutes a public notice and who is responsible for posting and removing it. I mean, if it's just the changes in our ordinances, I mean, like we had a discussion about this today, the city clerk and I, and a couple times a year we just put in the papers, and I don't know if it goes out on KFSK, but when our meeting times are, and that's something we don't have to post every Friday. We don't have to say we're having a meeting every other Monday. It's just something that we've done intermittently through the year. I don't know, what's the wish of the assembly?
Mr. Mayor, I could probably come up for a definition for the assembly to consider at the next meeting, and it's going to go on the lines of whatever is required to be posted, spelled out in the charter. If we've got to post something, that's what we can call a public notice. And I'd call everything else as a public service announcement that doesn't bear any weight as far as vital notification to someone. It's, hey, there's a meeting, there's...
Specifically, rule changes would be what we are required to post.
I could work
possibly.
on something like that. Maybe not the next meeting, but the second meeting in March, because I won't be here at the next one.
Yeah, and I don't know that this is something that we have to do immediately, but it's a concern that we have to address as the assembly. So, just like many other topics that are going to be coming up.
Add one more thing too. When the Charter Commission was putting the charter together, they did want, like Assembly Member Wilherter said, our obligation to make an effort. I have to admit though, in 2006, we weren't posting anything to our website, so that's really migrated in the last couple of years. So that's something that wasn't even thought of really just that short a time ago.
Just on that doesn't on these 3 topics of Mr. Cole's concern, but we're looking at coming up with a way and putting something on the agenda that if you know, the people can get the agenda electronically on Friday afternoon, and if they want to comment by phone or whatever kind of communications they have to get to our phone system, they could call in, and there'll be like a 5 or 15-minute time on the agenda where we will actually take comments about issues, you know, at hand that evening by phone. So we're trying to come up with methods that we could use to get the people that are a little bit off the grid to be able to participate. But it's not going to happen, in my opinion, overnight.
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, to add to that, one of the reasons is we need a budget for it, including, you know,
Right.
improving the sound system in this room, and, you know, if we're going to put, as Glo said, some outdoor billboards up, they get pricey.
Right.
And, you know, we've tried to approach this borough transition process like we did through the process, which was saying, you know, we're trying to avoid spending money on things that we don't necessarily have to. I think improving the sound system in this room is a need. The billboards, we just want to be careful how we spend our money and, you know, make sure we get adequate notice out, but not do it in a way where we're having to replace them every year.
Mr. Mayor,
Member Walhuter?
would it be effective to, mining the same vein here that Assemblyman or Assembly Person Strand was talking about, is maybe put this off until next meeting and see if we can get some public opinion on this. You know, maybe that'll help us with our decisions.
Member Haverlick?
Mr. Mayor, and you know, the other thing, you know, in Kathy's research of this, what would in this day and age constitutes a posting?
Right.
Because it just isn't rational to me that you'd want to put something at the bottom of Papke's Landing where someone has to pay $50 to get in their skiff and go to Papke's Landing and back, when they can turn their generator on for a couple bucks and get on the website and there's the posting. What is you know, again, what constitutes a posting, and what's, you know, just common sense?
So it sounds like, did you have another comment, Mr.?
Oh, I was just going to add just one more little comment here. You know, maybe to help these people feel like they're less disenfranchised, I think we should ask for some of their opinions on what works for them. You know, just show them that we're kind of open and transparent. You know, we don't want to seem standoffish about, well, we've done what we said we'd do. I would like them to weigh in, and if they don't weigh in by the next meeting, then maybe we'll make the decision for them.
It might actually be from one of the city clerk's comments, the March 4th, second meeting?
Second meeting in
Yeah,
March.
let's give them some time.
Second meeting in March, I think.
We'll put out a public notice asking for comment.
Yeah, we could put it on our website.
The second
Member
meeting in
Strand?
March is a night meeting.
Oh, is it? That's right. You wanted to, we can have something together for the 4th. I won't be here, but Debbie will be. We'll have
Or the
something
first
on the
meeting, the third meeting from now, which is another day meeting.
So like at the end of March? Or
First meeting in April.
The first meeting in April, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, should have been recognized, sorry. The Harbor Board meetings are usually a lot more informal. Yeah, I would agree that, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be done right away, does it? It's just that's something that we need to address and make sure that we get it right, you know, so that we get their support.
April.
I agree with that.
Meeting then?
Just for assembly members, I guess I'm not going to giving a notice, but mid-March, 20th of March or so, I will be going herring fishing for possibly up to a month. So our Vice Mayor, Mrs. Flint, will be presiding when I'm gone, just so for thought. But I'll be participating by phone as often as I can. Anyway, so it sounds like it's the wish of the Assembly to have this discussion at our next meeting, and hope we will get some input from some of the people that it would affect, you know, that would like to have postings in a certain area and what we're going to post.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make the offer that if there are a reasonable number of postings and a place to put them out at Papke's Landing between now and the meeting at which we make our decision, I can post those messages.
Thank you. So, Is that all the discussion on the
Just a
communication?
clarification, is it gonna be the next meeting, or are you looking at the first meeting in April?
What's the wish of the assembly? Well, maybe we can't get all the information and comments we need to make a decision by the first meeting in March. We could
First meeting in
have it
April?
on our agenda for discussion. If we don't have all the information, maybe we could keep bumping it down the road until we have the information we want.
All right.
Does that make sense?
I have a feeling this is going to be an ongoing discussion, so yes.
The whole transition period
Yeah.
is going to be a lot of discussion. Right. So, if we're done with that, then council discussion items.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor, I have a kind of a communication discussion.
Oh, okay.
Just hearing you comment on your trip to Juneau that you weren't able to meet with Representative Pertula. She will be here March 9th. She's the speaker at the Chamber of Commerce banquet, so she'll be in town for, at least 24 hours if we can pin her down and have a little conversation.
Her office was wonderful. She was tending to a very ill mother, but made all the arrangements for us to meet with her staff and stuff. So
Yeah. Another opportunity, however.
Yes, it is. And like I said earlier, I'm going to make some appointments through our lobbyist to visit people in Juneau next week again. And I think I've got permission from the Assembly to do that. I won't, just going to mainly lobby for the funding for the fire hall. Police station. We've got the money for that one already. Anyway, is that all the communications? I guess there is one more line of communications I should mention. I had a letter from Stephanie Scott, I believe her name is, from the Haines Borough. She wrote a letter to the governor, or has a letter drafted that she wants to send to the governor's office about the change in the ferry.
Alaska's only toll road.
So, yeah. So, if everybody's seen a copy of that, if I wrote back and I mentioned to her that we had a transportation committee meeting going on today and we were going to get direction from that, and then the Borough of Petersburg would more than likely make some kind of a comment about the ferry system. So, without reading her letter, I could forward it to everybody if you want to look at it. Everybody's got their own opinions, but at some point we should probably take a position on it. So I guess that's under communications. We could.
Right. Yeah. Forward it, please.
Okay. All right. So that brings us. I'm trying to get the hang of this thing, so bear with me. Up to recognitions. This agenda item is reserved to acknowledge individuals, groups, departments, agencies, or anyone for their contributions toward the betterment of the Petersburg community. And we recognized Carl and his staff earlier. Thanks again, Carl. Any other recognitions? Anybody, any staff have any recognitions? Okay, council discussion items. Item B, cruise ship dumping. I guess that means the wastewater bill that went through the Senate today. So it's unfortunately, in my opinion, a done deal. I've had discussions with a few people around Southeast that are disappointed in the way that bill got kind of pushed through the legislature. There's discussion amongst a few people about another voters initiative to get it on the ballot. So we voted in again where cruise ships have to meet standards. I talked to the DEC lady after one of her presentation up at AML and asked her where are the mixing zones, and she couldn't really give me an answer that I felt comfortable with. So anyway, anybody else want to comment on that wastewater bill? Okay, that's.
I don't think my comments are acceptable in this company.
I second that.
Talk to you on the street later then. Okay, that's the last item on the agenda except for motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, John.
Yeah, I'd never look at them.
What's that? The recession going on.